Okey-dokey. It is 8:15, so I would like to call to order a special meeting of the City of Kerrville Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. I see we have a quorum with 2 members absent. Ashley, would you like to introduce our new board members?
Sure. We have sitting next to me is Celeste Hannon, Matthew Thurlow, and then we also have Linda Abels. And I will let them go around one at a time and introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about each other. About themselves, not about each other.
I can tell you all sorts of stories about Lisa. No. Celeste Hammond, and I moved to Kerrville about 3 years ago. I have a background in wellness and worked for the recreational sports department at UT Austin for quite a few years as well. I'm really excited about swimming possibilities here in Kerrville, and I have an adult stroke clinic that is scheduled for June the 3rd. I have handouts here that I would love to give you if you have anybody that you know that is a swimmer. It's for all abilities, whether you're a relatively new swimmer or you've been swimming a long time, there's something that you can learn from it. And I would love to see a community response so that we know that we have some good swimmers out here that want to have more swimming options in Kerrville. So that's sort of where I'm playing from.
When you said stroke, I work with hospice patients.
Oh yeah, you were thinking no. This is
And I thought, oh, wow.
this is a swim stroke.
Thank
the
you.
freestyle swim
Thank
stroke.
you for
Yeah,
that
and hopefully
clarification.
no strokes in the pool. Thanks.
Matthew.
Matt Thurlow. I also moved to Kerrville just 3 years ago from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where I was a landscape architect at the Department of Conservation and Recreation for 30 years. I was a certified arborist there, a certified playground safety inspector, and duties as landscape architect. I was able to get a early retirement, and my in-laws have lived in Kerrville for almost 35 years and started a cat shelter.
Oh wow.
And
Oh.
my wife's mom passed away, and father-in-law got in sort of over his head. So things were just serendipitous that he needed us down here. I was able to retire, so down we came. And my wife takes care of all the cats, but I'm involved also.
Ms. Abels.
Hi. My daddy grew up in Kerrville. My grandparents lived here. One of my grandfathers was superintendent and principal and teacher at the Hunt School many, many, many years ago. And so I've been coming to Kerrville my whole life. Daddy was Navy. We moved all over, mainly California and Hawaii, and which was a nice place to go to high school, by the way. And we were really excited to get a chance to come back and really live in Kerrville, because we came every year for 2 weeks of my life. And I'm married to Steve Abels, and he came to Kerrville in 1978. So we've been here a while. And I was director of music at First United Methodist Church for 31 years, and I loved it. I loved doing it. But I retired when I became a grandmother, because my grandkids were, at that time, California, Bloomington in Indiana, and Sacramento, California. Then the ones from Los Angeles moved to Chappaqua, New York. So I've got them on both coasts in the middle, and I go see them a lot. And when they come and the older ones spend a couple of weeks with us every summer in Kerrville. We've been to every park and recreational facility in this town, and it's just wonderful what goes on here. We're proud of this town. We love living here.
Welcome, all of you. We look forward to the talents you're saying you have. I think it'll add a lot of strength to our board. The next item on the agenda is election of officers. We have 2 officers, Ashley. I'm currently the chair, and Greg is the assistant chair, right?
Vice Chair.
So I'd be happy to continue, but this is.
I wouldn't mind doing it
my
either,
procedure.
because this is my last year on the board. This is my 4th year. And if you don't particularly want to do it, I wouldn't mind doing it myself.
Well, I've really enjoyed doing it.
Well, this is your 3rd year, is it?
No, I don't think so. I think it's,
Well,
I
whatever.
don't know. But whatever the board thinks, if it's important to you to be the chair, then
Oh,
certainly
I wouldn't mind doing it, yeah. There's Ruth.
Morning. Change it up.
Hi, Rose. So I'll call a vote.
I'd nominate Bedford as chair and Diane, you as vice chair
I think
for this coming year.
Do we have a second on that motion?
We'll second it.
Okay. In terms of discussion, I think that I would just like to be a member then.
Well, then I'll change my nomination. I nominate Bedford as chair and Lisa as vice chair.
My apologies for being here late. Discussion on the table
Is the election of officers.
What are the responsibilities of vice chair?
Basically chairing the meeting and occasionally interfacing with Ashley.
And what's the responsibilities of the vice chair?
Sorry?
What's the responsibilities of the vice chair,
The
just to
vice
step
chair
in?
fills in for the chair in the chair's absence. It's not really too demanding. It's a nice job.
So I'll second Bedford's motion.
And who was
Oh,
the,
I mean,
The
I'm sorry,
vice chair.
John's.
I'm sorry, who was the vice chair?
Lisa? I didn't ask you, I just,
Yeah, I mean, it's not a big job, so.
yeah,
Okay.
well, somebody has to,
Yeah, neither one of them are a big job.
yeah.
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 All in favor of the motion as proposed, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Motion carries. Okay, next item is approval of minutes. Have you all had a chance to review them? Do you have any comments or notations? If not, a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Consideration and possible action, recommendation for the final, I'm sorry, do you have?
Yeah,
go
can
back,
I just
Lisa?
have, I know we're not, the Open Meetings Act and all that is pretty, specific about what we can and can't share by email. But it would be nice to have a list of everybody's first and last name that, that you could refer to.
For
As
the
opposed-
members?
Just for the members, yeah.
And contact information?
And just, I mean, I know we're not supposed to, have a quorum and there's all the Open Meetings Act and all that other stuff, but it's just nice to have a list, especially because we have new members and all of that, just to
I
help.
think we've had a list in the past.
I know,
Probably time for a new one, though.
yeah, it's time for a new one.
We'll get that to you.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Okay, the recommendation for the final purchases for the sports complex project. Ashley?
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning. I don't know if y'all had a chance to read your email last night. I know I kind of sent it kind of mid-afternoon. But the reason why we called this meeting today and this morning is to provide you with our staff recommendations of the final kind of draw of the sports complex projects. We have a little bit of money left over in the project balance, and we've identified and are recommending several projects to kind of to complete with the project. So, and I'll show you a couple pictures, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them, or I will defer to Shane or Kyle. So essentially we have about $250,000 left. Like I said, we've been open since January, so over these past several months in operations, we've been evaluating the maintenance practices. We have 4 staff members out there currently, so we're really looking to see what we can do to kind of improve efficiencies out there. And then also on the flip side of that, we're looking at how we can make this facility look better, aesthetics-wise, to increase marketability and attract tournaments and folks to the complex as well. So the first item is we're wanting to pave this area right here where you see some dirt. This is a little maintenance road that our staff and the DBAT staff uses on a regular basis. This would be about $6,000. It would be materials only. We'd be looking to do this in-house with our street staff. But we're also going to price it out to see if we can happen to get a contractor that would do it cheaper. I doubt, since we're only paying for materials, but we'll see where we land here. But the reason why we're wanting to pave this is it's especially when it rains or if it's wet, we're tracking mud and dirt and debris all over the sidewalks. It's a pain. We don't have time to clean it off, so it just really would help kind of the operations and the cleanliness of the facility to have a little bit of a paved road here.
And is this road paved?
It's not, no, so we're looking to do kind of the dirt section, and if you see where the concrete is at the bottom right of the picture, it'll kind of connect with a left, kind of a U shape around that electrical box to connect to that kind of little dirt path. That's what we're looking to pave.
Whereabouts is this on the fields?
That is right behind the turf field, behind the DBAT building, going to pod 1.
Is it bituminous or is it concrete?
I'm sorry?
Bituminous?
It'll be asphalt.
Okay.
Okay, so our second, if I can just take this time to remind everybody to put on their mics if y'all haven't already, that way we can get the comments on record. Right, so second on our priority list would be to add a couple of soccer lights. We already have the conduit installed and in place, and this would just basically be adding 2 additional lights to the soccer fields to give additional field play. We have right now 1 full-size field with lights, and currently it's not enough for our programming. We have Crush that's out there needing lights. We have OLH that's out there needing lights. And this would give some additional field play in addition to helping with the wear and tear on the fields. Some of the goal mouths get worn out. We can kind of move them back and move the field space to where we can kind of maintain the quality of the turf. And that's running at about $70,000 to add lights there. Okay, you've probably noticed this if you've been out the complex since day one, is we do not have sod or irrigation in our common areas. We really only have them on the fields themselves. So this third priority would be about roughly $87,000, and we're looking to sod the lanes, which would be the opposite sides of the concrete to the pods, install irrigation, install sod to kind of spruce it up, make it look a lot nicer and easier to kind of maintain for us. This does not include sodding the slopes. We would install some irrigation here and throw out some seed and hope to establish a good turf and to improve the way it looks. Because right now, as you can see, it's doesn't look too good. So that's what we would be looking to do there on the baseball side of the complex. And we would do this at all 3 pods. We would do the lanes with sod, and then we would do the seed on the slopes.
And would that include bringing in new dirt?
Mm-hmm.
We've got some dirt, especially in the big bowl area. When you drive up, we're gonna have to put some dirt over that. It's really not the best soil.
Yeah.
We'll probably go through and aerate it, try to till it in a little bit better, just cultivate it, so make it a better soil.
But would this be this time of year
Yeah.
or later? Because this time of year is not very conducive to get something going.
Actually, within the next couple of weeks, it would be the best time of year. We can't do it any later than that. We need to get the seed in the ground fairly
because of the
soon.
heat.
Because even with the heat's not too bad. It's the cooler ground temperatures that are gonna be worse. So we've gotta get the seed in the ground now and get it going, because if we wait until the ground temperatures get cooler, the grass won't grow.
I was wondering about the slope. Will the seeds stay in place well enough?
On the slopes, we have some erosion barrier and some erosion mat that's already stapled down. And we've got some seed that's in place there already, but the problem that we're running into is we have no way to water it. So whenever we get these real dry parched temperatures, even though we have the seed in place, we can't cultivate any sort of a good turf because we can't water it.
And then if you get a big rain, guess where the seed goes?
Exactly. So it's kind of we're in just kind of between a rock and a hard place with the way the condition is now.
Just a question though, I mean, when we seed all of this and sod all of this, is that going to add to our maintenance requirements? And do we have the staff to take care of mowing and all of that stuff without adding future staff? Question.
Obviously anything that we do is going to add, the more that we add to the complex is going to add to staffing issues. We're already a bit understaffed as it is, and we're doing everything that we can now to keep the complex in the shape it is that you see it. The common areas aren't too bad because we don't have to maintain those at such a manicured, pristine surface like the field surface themselves. But this also serves two folds. Right now, we're tracking a lot of weed seeds everywhere. So every time that we drive equipment through this, we're grabbing weed seeds on our tires or on the decks of these mowers, and they're just following us places. So, I guess you could look at it two ways. You could look at it as, oh, it's gonna be more mowing, more this, more that, but it's also gonna be less weed control, less spraying on fields because we're tracking all these weed seeds everywhere.
I guess the only thing, Ashley, that I would suggest, I mean, we need to understand, is this another FTE that we're gonna have to add to the budget for next year? I mean, I'm not against it, I'm just, we need to go into this with our eyes open to understand what we're doing here.
Right, understood. The part of the budget process is we're actually requesting additional staffing to maintain the current levels as it is. And something to keep in mind too, on these common areas, especially the slopes, that we don't have to mow them down and keep them as pristine as the turf fields. We can actually kind of do some mowing swells and keep some of the area native, but we just kind of wanting to make it look more aesthetically appealing than it is now. I don't anticipate this requiring a whole lot of extra staffing time to maintain kind of the slope areas.
So is there any way to do a little bit more native plants, or does that just become more of a problem as well? Like native grasses and things. You still got dirt, and then you're tracking, or you would need rock. Or
The problem with some of the native grasses is, and we started with some native grasses out there in the project itself, and they just didn't do well. With the native grasses, it takes so long to really get a dense canopy because some of them they're just harder to propagate than others. So what we found is that using the Bermuda grass strains that we use are easier, and then you'll eventually get some of that native grass just through the birds and nature. Nature adds a lot of native stuff to places that you didn't really necessarily think it would be. So we'll get some in there. It's going to creep into it, but also with native grasses too, they like to be at a much higher mowing height. And when I say much higher, I'm talking 7 to 8, 9 inches, and so it almost looks kind of unkempt in a way. So you really have to weigh on each hand, what do you want it to look like? Do you want it to look like a common area that's clean and green and nice, or do you want it to be a little bit shaggy? Because that tends to be what the native grass look is. So then you almost get back to square one where it doesn't really have the look that you were kind of shooting for.
Do we have an estimate of the acreage that we're adding here?
For the common areas?
Yeah, how many acres or how many square feet of additional?
I didn't figure
sod.
that. I didn't figure that up. And the sod again is going kind of through. Ashley had showed a picture earlier in some of these areas right here. And again, we're not sodding the entire thing. We're going to sod into some areas that there's going to be a lot heavier foot traffic because the seed will never get to growing. If we have that many people walking on it, the sod would be a much better solution there. But I could get that number. I don't have that number right off the top of my head, not without throwing out a complete guesstimate.
Going back to that previous picture, right there, does this proposal include irrigation for these two areas here as well?
Yes.
Affluent water?
Yes. That's correct. Which will be coming online in about a month, maybe less, the sports complex. Okay. Our next item would be our fertigation system in a building on the soccer side. Essentially what fertigation is, it's a system where it injects the fertilizers into the irrigation system, which kind of helps us at a staffing level. It also is beneficial because it allows the nutrients to go directly into the root zone where they're kind of most needed. So it goes hand in hand with efficiency and kind of best practices. So we're recommending that system, in addition the building to store the associated chemicals. And that's coming in at about $20,000. Yes.
Is this going to be done as needed? It's not an automatic fertilization.
It won't fertilize every time we irrigate. It'll be on a schedule that Shane will set, which would coincide with the seasons and the turf and everything else.
So we won't have any nutrient runoff that kind of works against?
No, we'll we'll schedule it, it's as needed, and again, it's a really diluted nitrogen, because again, we're not putting a massive amount of nitrogen on there every time we do it. But also, it's a two-part process as well, because you also inject micronutrients with that fertigation system as well. We have a modified sand-based soil, so that sand doesn't retain very many nutrients. By adding the micronutrients in there, we can create a better soil that's healthier and more conducive to growing the grass. So it's really a two-part system.
Well, if it doesn't stay in the sand, where's it going?
Well, some of it will just burn up. The plant uses it up. So it's not per se like all of it's, and I know what your concern is with Town Creek being below there and all the direct
yeah.
runoff.
Mhm.
It's nothing like that. Again, golf courses all over use this. We even have one on our golf course here, and Quinlan Creek runs through it. So we're really not doing anything out of the norm. We're not doing anything that's going to hurt any sort of ecosystem around the sports complex at all.
Another question, was this part of the reuse pond project that we took out?
It was.
Okay,
Yeah.
just,
Exactly. Yeah, it was part of the original scope that we had to cut out due to the pricing.
yeah, okay.
One other thing this allows us to do too is it saves us a little bit of time and labor in granular fertilizer applications. Now we can do it while we're watering. So again, we can take those staff hours, because it takes about 2 guys an entire day to fertilize the entire complex once. So we can take those staff hours and divert them to other things, per se, common area mowing, things like that.
Is
So
there-
basically, we're just flip-flopping hours of what we're doing. We have some convenience here, and so we can take that time that we would have usually been doing granular applications and use it to work on something else.
I think it's a great way to fertilize, as long as it's judiciously applied, which you say it is. Is it drip or elevated spray?
It's what it is everything's self-contained in storage tanks over by the effluent pond that they're building currently, and so it has a mechanical pump that injects it in as the water's coming through, and then it comes out through the sprinkler heads like that.
Oh, it is a sprinkler head?
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
not drip?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
And you have the ability to do it by zones?
Yes, sir. But when you say that, we have the ability to turn it on and off. Now, if we turn it on, it's going to do everything. So we can't really per se, like on the soccer side, we have 74 zones, 74 sections. We can't say, oh, well, we want to do 14 of them and not the rest. I would have to go in there and manually turn it off at the first 14 or whatever number that may be. But ideally, you'd want it applied to everything, because again, the fertilizer and the micronutrients, we need it. It's the same root zone over everything, the same root zone mix. So, and again, with that sand-based root zone, the sand's great because it allows the water to go through it really quickly. It doesn't hold water, but at the same time, it doesn't hold nutrients either. It's got a very low clay and silt content. So that's, the higher the clay and silt content, the more that it holds these nutrients that you need. So, but for sports turf, the root zone mix that we have is great. It's one of the best you can get. It's right below a U.S. Golf grade of what they use on fairways on most golf courses.
What is the frequency that you plan to use to fertilize? I don't know anything about this, so I'm just curious.
Right now, we'll fertilize every 9 to 10 days. And again, it's a liquid nitrogen, so they come out, you contract with a fertilizer company, they come out, they fill the tank, and then again, that injector pump injects it in. And again, it's going to keep a little bit better green on it. It's going to make the blade of the grass a little bit wider, because that's what happens with grass when it absorbs that nitrogen. It gets real fat and succulent. So it's going to make it a little bit better playing surface, as well as hardy playing surface. Also, you're not going to see so much of the wear, because again, we're forcing the grass to grow now. Agronomically speaking, it's going to be a lot better surface. Not that the surface is bad, it's just going to help us keep a better surface.
The chemicals are not included in this cost?
The first round of chemicals are.
Since we asked that question, is the chemical cost goes up, stays the same, goes down as a
No,
result of this?
the chemical cost, and I'd have to go back through my records to look, but I want to say a yearly chemical cost was about $7,500. That's with micronutrients included. Liquid nitrogen's cheap. It's not very expensive at all. It's an ag grade product that we buy.
How's that compared to your granular cost?
There's more granular apps, so we're going to save a little bit of money, and then we're also going to save some time. Again, it's going to kind of depend on the growing year, just like everything. If there's more rain, if we're getting a little bit more help from Mother Nature, we'll run it less, because obviously the more lightning, the more rain, thunderstorms you have come through, you get that natural nitrogen that comes down, and you're going to have to do it less. We save money, obviously. If we could, we'd have a thunderstorm every other week, and we wouldn't be talking about this. But it's really going to depend on the growing year. It's going to depend on, do we have a season where there's high winds and we're getting dissipation from our irrigation system, which every irrigation system does that, then you're going to have to use it a little bit more. But if we're getting some help from Mother Nature and things are going really nice and we don't get these extreme heat summers that we do sometimes, we'll run it a little bit less and save some money. It really all depends.
Okay, good questions. All right, so the next item would be to turf some of the area right outside the dugouts. It's not turfing the dugouts itself, but actually turfing the exterior of it, where you can start to see that wear and tear on the left-hand side of the picture. And on the right, I'm kind of standing where we would start it and then run it all the way down to the into the gate section. It's about 8 to 10 foot wide path that we would actually turf to help keep it in a better quality of what it is. As you can see now, we've been open 5 months, and this is what's happening to the turf. This is where the coaches and the players, they'll stand, they'll rub their feet against the grass and just tears it up. So to kind of help with the aesthetics and maintain the turf, is we're recommending just kind of artificially turfing this area
Is that
on all of
every
the
field?
on all the pods.
It's on the baseball fields.
Baseball fields.
Obviously, you don't have that problem on softball.
I was going to say, in softball, we don't see it that much, but we do need signage out there.
For
Home, visitors, stay off of the kids from climbing the netting behind the backstops.
Yeah, we've talked about some of those signs with DBAT, and we're kind of going back and forth about what are the right signs for the complex, what's the most common signs that you see, how do you word it, do you make them too big to where all of a sudden you're blocking vision and things like that. So we're in talks with them about trying to get some of that signage to get it going.
Could I do a go back? I'm sorry. On the fertilization, what would you expect the annual cost to be?
As far as the chemicals go, I think we're sitting anywhere from $700 to $8,500 right in there. Again, depends. That number can go up a little bit or down a little bit, but not drastically.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item would be adding some sidewalk extensions around the DBAT building here. As you can see kind of in the left-hand picture, the sidewalk hugs the building and takes a very linear path to the pod. What we're seeing now here is there's a lot of kind of cattle paths of people walking from pod 1 directly, kind of diagonally to where the flagpoles are and connecting there as well. So we're looking to add an extension there and also to kind of keep them better path of travel, and also kind of keep them protected against those doors that tend to kind of swing open on the DBAT building, which are right on the sidewalk. So there's that picture there on the left, and then a closer up picture, excuse me, on the right side where you can see the flagpoles on the exterior of the DBAT building, as well as where we would connect that sidewalk.
So you're gonna just make them wider, or you're gonna do like a diagonal sidewalk?
We're going to do a
across?
diagonal connection to where we connect here and then run it up through there, so folks don't have to either cut across the grass or follow that sidewalk. Here's another area where we would add connections here as well, near the connecting the sidewalk that's closest to the building to that existing path to travel down to the pod. And then we'd also add a connection here where the gate is, where we have our equipment that's constantly coming back and forth to keep the sidewalks clean and to have some consistency there as well. We have it on one side, but we don't have it on the other.
And when you say sidewalks, you're talking asphalt?
Concrete.
Or you're concrete here? Okay.
Mm-hmm. So those are the sidewalk extensions. And then the next item would be to add a extension to our staff maintenance building. As you can see here, the photo in the left, it's uncovered. This is where we keep a lot of our equipment, so we want to cover it and protect it. We have our trucks, we have our tractors, we have our mowing equipment. Not all of it fits inside our building, so we're wanting to cover and protect it as well, and then have an extension on the back to be able to utilize this for a little bit of storage and to protect our equipment. Because right now it's all sitting out there, so if we get a hailstorm or whatever, it's there and it's exposed. Did I miss anything?
Would it be enclosed?
It'll be enclosed on 3 sides. It'll also give us a place too to store fertilizers, any sort of bulk in-bag materials like that we really would like to keep covered as opposed to having sitting outside. Or if we put them inside, then we have to put some of our inside equipment outside. It's kind of a back and forth battle. But the equipment to maintain the complex is extremely expensive. Nothing is cheap. And so for us to really take care of it and really get the best use and the most longevity out of it, ideally it's covered.
Okay. Next would be doing some landscaping improvements and exterior of the DBAT building. As you can see, it's kind of rough. We don't have irrigation there, and the turf kind of is what it is. We've gotten a lot of feedback from our customers and also our tenant there that says, "Hey, can y'all spruce up the front a little bit? Looks a little like it needs a little bit of tender love and care out there." You have this great facility, and then you come to the front of the complex, and it looks like that. So we'd recommend installing some irrigation and then throwing down some sod to make it look a little bit nicer when you're coming into the face of that building.
What was put there originally in the front? Anything?
In the front, they seeded it, but they had an above-ground irrigation system just to get the seed going, and that was the contractor's responsibility. Basically to get the seed up, to get 75 to 80% vegetation, and they did that. But then when they left, their temporary above-ground irrigation system left with them, and there goes your grass. So it's kind of they upheld their end of the bargain and what they were contracted to do, but in the long run, for us to really make it nice turf and everything, we've got to have the ability to water.
The devil's in the details.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, can you do native plants there?
As far as native plants, we were looking at doing a few flower beds around the building, maybe with lantana, salvia, a few things like that, rosemary, things that grow easy, deer resistant obviously, but it just doesn't take up enough of the space. We're going to plant 3 or 4 trees in the front, probably a crepe myrtle, something like that. That's a native tree, low water, easy to take care of. But we're see these dirt areas where everybody walks, and again, they just kind of pound them down, and once they're bad and you get the traffic on it, they just go from bad to worse in a heartbeat.
You put a tree here and there, that kind of changes the traffic pattern.
Right.
Sure, and it'll also soften the look of the front of that building.
Yeah.
Remember, rosemary is highly flammable, so you don't want it too close to the building if there's anything flammable. The fire safety things is keep a boundary. Don't have rosemary or cedar too close to your house because they both love to burn.
Is there a way to reach out to some of our local nurseries if they would like to donate a tree or something to be able to plant in front of there?
Well, luckily with the trees, the crepe myrtles that we've been using, we've been able to dig them up from the farm, and so they're free. So we've been able to dig up some pretty good sized crepe myrtle trees. I think we dug up 11 of them last winter, and all 11 of them are fine. We had a 100% success rate with transplant.
I'm just looking to reach out to our community and get them involved in this project.
Sure, we can
Have
start.
some kind of base.
Well, the Native Plant Society's always been receptive to helping with that too,
Sure.
through the Riverside Nature Center.
And it's kind of a fine balance too, because the more flower beds that we make, the more we've got to maintain them. So then you get back into the staffing needs and the staffing hours.
Right.
And
That's
it's
why I'm
just
saying native versus,
Sure.
yeah.
Pray for rain.
Or like those big fountain kind of grasses that are native too. I mean, they can take up space and they look nice and they soften the look and will change your traffic pattern as well. You can put them where you don't want people walking.
I guess what we're saying is it's good to keep in mind, the water situation we have in our area and working with nature as much as we can and still keep the appropriate appearance.
Will there be a plan that we could review before the installation of these plants and trees?
We could have a plan drawn up, or we could draw up a rough plan for you guys to see if you'd like.
That'd be nice.
Or he can work
You can help
together
us
with you.
with this.
Absolutely.
That'd be great. And the sports complex is another facility that we're keeping on our list for our commemorative tree program as well. Y'all know that we have that program. We're pushing people towards Louise Hayes Park to get trees planted on that side of the trailhead because it's very unshaded over there. And we also have the complex available for additional trees to where they buy the tree and then we just plant them and maintain them and water them. So we get free trees. So there's that one. The next item, I didn't include a picture, but it's our dedication plaque. It's kind of one of those necessary items that we don't have to do, but we really should do. It's a city building that we dedicated, so we really need to put a plaque on it. So there's that cost. And then the next two items are the ones that we identified as optional just strictly due to the pricing. This is something that we hope to do in the future, but we have our an area on the soccer side, as you can see, and we have a couple of concrete pads there that were left over from previous use, but we've identified that area to install a playscape. We kind of roughed in a number at 50,000. That would give us a really nicely sized playground and all of the equipment and barriers that it takes to go along with that. We could scale it down as well, but I wouldn't scale it down too much. Otherwise, you risk putting a very small structure there that doesn't really get much use. So that's something that we've listed as optional that we'll look at to see how we can fund in the future, but it's not part of the project drawdown.
Are there any leftover playground things? Remember when they updated some of the parks? I don't mean for a current project, but again in the future. Are they all, Lisa's shaking her head, I guess they're,
I've seen them, it's.
okay, never mind.
Yeah, it's either no
They
longer
took 'em down if
meets
they weren't
code
good.
or
If they were any good, they left them.
That's true,
And there's
yeah.
nothing,
It's tough to reuse playground equipment.
yeah.
Some of it went to the dog park though.
I was just about to
It's
mention
really cool
that.
over at the
Yeah.
dog
Yeah.
park.
All of our equipment out there
For
was
dogs,
recycled.
okay, but for dogs, it's all right. For kids, I'm kind of skeptical.
Actually,
about
the
that.
kids come in there and play on that old stuff too. I've seen them.
True. My kids do as well. All right, so there's an optional item. And then the other optional item is we've had a little bit of feedback from folks looking at our a monument signage that was actually gifted to us. It wasn't a part of our project, but this is a gift to the city from the Callow Foundation, was to look at adding the word softball to the monument sign. So we looked into this, and essentially it's not an easy fix. You just can't just throw softball up there without it looking like an afterthought. So you'd actually have to rework those three cast areas to make it look right. And the cost of that would be roughly $5,000 because of all that rework. There's lighting that we'd have to redo. So it's not an inexpensive fix per se. So that's why we kind of put that at the optional area. In addition, just kind of as a reminder, the language was kind of selected just as a generality of the sport is, the baseball, softball's over here, soccer fields are over here. We didn't include, senior softball, little league, all the sports that we could possibly put on the signs. It's just kind of just the generality of the sport. So there's that one. And then that concludes all of our recommendations. So we are looking kind of at just looking for kind of a stamp of approval from you guys, or if you have anything else that you see as a higher priority that we didn't list. After
I have
thoughts?
one other thing, I'm sorry. Scoreboards.
Scoreboards, yeah. We were actually talking with DBAT about those as well. Brandon actually is recommending doing more of a monitor system. He says those are kind of more popular now. Scoreboards are kind of more obsolete. So DBAT's actually working on that. The city's not planning to fund scoreboards at this time because we have possibly an alternate funding source for that. So they're looking at a solution for those.
and then, so the project balance, this $255,000, so this is just due, because I remember when the project went out, and then we had to scale it back, and then budgeting, and all this other stuff. So is this just the fact that you guys have brought stuff in-house and were able to save this money? And some of these things that you're proposing were in the original proposal that now you're putting back in because there might be money, or how did it all go down?
I'll defer to our project engineer.
What was the question?
How did we get the savings? How do we have
So we have this project balance, and so was that just due to, things going our way? I mean, because I remember when we first did the budget, things got scaled back because it was over budget. And now it seems like some of these things that were scaled back on are being proposed to put back in because we've saved the money. Is this just due diligence? Is this just a stroke of luck? I mean, how did it all?
Yes. So what's actually, this is actually a savings from the Fieldhouse DBAT building itself. We had two separate projects. Most of the cuts that you see were within the actual sports complex project, which had a very limited and very tight budget, all of which we expended most of the budget. This is actually was just for the building and the turf field. And so the $250,000 savings that we had was because we had a little bit higher contingency budget, and construction costs came in well, had a few change orders, but we still had this buffer between what we wanted to do and let's not cut everything out on the field house, but again, the sports complex was a completely different project. So we can utilize these funds to try to piece some of those things that got cut as part of the big sports complex project. So, if that makes any sense.
Okay, and this was all city budget, or is this EIC money, or what is?
This is all city general fund.
Ashley, if we recommend that we proceed with this to the council, where do the funds come from?
Where do they come from?
Yeah. I mean, do we have money that we can allocate for these projects? Does the city have money? I know that we have a balanced budget. So if you add $250,000 to it, how do we account for that? I mean, where does the money come from?
I'll take that. So this is actually, as I just mentioned to Lisa, to her question, this is already accounted for in the Fieldhouse project. So you won't see any hits on the general fund into operating or anything like this. This is already budgeted money from previous years. And so basically we have $255,000 that either gets used for
Okay, I'm
some of these.
sorry, I didn't pick up on that.
Oh, not a
Okay,
problem.
I'm with you.
If there are no other questions.
I have a
Okay.
comment more than a question, Ashley, and that I think when you present something like this, you really ought to add what impact you're having, even if it's a partial person, on full-time equivalents labor. And is this a half a person addition, or is it a half a person reduction in labor? So that your boss understands and we understand what the impact is on ongoing operating cost as well as just project cost. Does that make sense? I mean,
Sure.
so with that said, I'm going to be supportive of what you're doing here, but I would like to see that kind of, your boss ought to ask for that anyway. He's not here.
Yeah, so everything that we put in here, like Shane said, is we're kind of diverting,
Understood.
staff resources and allocating them elsewhere. We're doing fertigation to minimize some of our labor there. We can concentrate in other areas. As we stand now, we are understaffed at the complex.
Yeah,
I've
but-
requested 2 additional FTEs in the FY19 budget, which I hope make. As we're kind of running staff a little bit ragged, we're borrowing from our parks maintenance staff on a regular basis for custodial. We have some of our seasonal staff over there working until the pool starts. So we're understaffed at this point. I'm
But
hopeful that we do get those positions, and then what we do here will alleviate some of the stress that we're seeing.
Well, I think, but this adds to that need too, because you're going to add so many additional square foot of mowing. I mean, these projects will add to full-time equivalents needed, right? Or am I wrong?
There'll be additional areas that we'll need to maintain.
So when you present a project, I would have thought our engineering people would always add the cost of the project plus the cost of impact on operating costs long-term.
It
So-
sounds like with the addition of surfacing in some areas and the more efficient way of fertilizing, that takes some of the time crunch off so that they could use it for these additional mowing areas. I don't know if it would be a wash or not, though.
It's not a total wash. I mean, that being said, we maintain the areas now. Obviously, if we do more to them, it's gonna be more maintenance. You know, more means more of everything. But it's not so large of an area that it's a massive impact to us and what we're already doing. But it's a great.
Is it is it a half a FTE, or is it a tenth, or is it one? I mean, you ought to know that when you're approving a project. That's what, I'll shut up. I make a motion that we support your recommendations.
Are there any other comments before we move
I
with
have
the
a little
motion?
question. Are we voting on the 255, or are we voting on the 303?
My motion was to approve what they're proposing, which is the 255.
Correct.
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of recommending to proceed with the proposal as presented to spend the $255,000 as indicated, please say yes.
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 Yes? Any opposed? Okay, you've got your recommendation.
I would say one thing, actually, make it real clear to whomever you present this to, that this is not additional funds that we're asking for. These are funds that have already been allocated to the project, and we're just, okay,
Utilizing it.
because that's not really clear. Yeah.
Okay,
We're using or
got it.
losing?
Beg pardon?
We're using or losing?
Yeah, that's right. We use them, we lose them.
Okay.
On item number 5, or no, we did that, 6. And that's adjournment. Anyone like to move that we adjourn at 9:01?
So moved.
Is there comments from the peanut gallery? I just want to put a reminder in that the park is doing an amazing job to promote this Get Outdoors Day, and there's going to be a ton of activities there, including it's going to kick off with a 5K run on the river trail, and then there's just going to be a lot of activity through the whole day. So this is the second weekend in June, the 9th. And I would just encourage you to get down there and just check it out and bring people and tell people, you know, because as the event grows, it's kind of also, I keep reminding them, it's an anniversary of the opening of the river trail. You know, so this will be the 3rd year that the river trail is open and this whole Get Outdoors Day. So I'm just going to do a plug, since there's a lot of people that are sitting in this room, I think, that are involved and having businesses down there and just different activities for the kids. We're doing a bicycle rodeo at 1 o'clock for any kids, you know, just bicycle skills things. There's gonna be like Zumba and
A lot of programming. We
yeah,
have
a lot of
paddleboard,
programming and
yoga.
things, so for like all ages,
Mhm.
you know, from kids all the way to adults. So I encourage you to get out there.
It's gonna be a great event.
Dunkin' booth again?
Yes, we are, and we're looking for volunteers to be in the dunking booth. So if any of you would like to be, maybe our new chair, or if y'all have a recommendation, let me know and I'll contact them.
Has Tina put out a request for help yet? I mean,
I
I
think-
don't think I've seen
I think
it.
that's come through from Josh.
Oh, Josh did?
Yeah.
Yeah, Josh is
they're
organizing
recruiting
this
help
event.
for it.
As we start putting things on and on for somebody that's been in Kerrville a long, long time, I remember a rule that was set because we used to have a back to school after Tranquility Island was cleaned up. We'd have a back to school party for all the teachers, give apples to the teachers and the cheerleaders would come and all that before the public school started up in the fall. And that's where I found out that there was a rule in place by the family who gave Tranquility Island to the city, that you can use Tranquility Island in any way you want as long as you never sell anything on it. The cheerleaders wanted to sell hot dogs on it. And when we checked into that, they said, no, you can, because if you use Tranquility Island for commercial reasons, it will revert back to the family. So I don't know. I never saw anything officially in writing, but it scared us enough. We never put anything on it. So I don't know, you know, sometimes as time goes by, the people that put things like that in place are gone and people don't remember. So
Yeah.
you need a few dollars.
That's the first I've ever heard of that. We'll go back and pull the deed and see
Yeah,
what it says.
and
if it's in
it,
there.
and it may have nothing on it,
Certainly
But-
worth looking at, though.
Yeah, because we really don't want to
I
make
know
that
that
mistake. They said, thanks for cleaning this up and putting
Most
these
of the activities are taking place in that great big field underneath the
Right, right,
bridge.
but you know, just if someone says, oh, I'm gonna set up a snow cone
Right.
stand to raise money for the Boy Scouts,
Yeah.
just to be sure we can do that. If we can do
Yeah.
that, cool. But we,
So just to speak to the notification, Josh sent out an email on March 22nd. Hello, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board members, and, you know, about this Saturday, June 9th, and then there was another, yeah, so that was the one, in March
But the
22nd.
3 new people might not have gotten it, because I didn't get that one.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because I weren't
So-
appointed yet.
yeah, I didn't either.
Yeah, so
be
you might want to
naming-
resend it to us, and we can sign up.
My daughter
I'll let them know.
teaches at Indiana University.
Yeah.
and-
Okay.
That's it? See you all next time.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, everybody.